Hello dear readers and subscribers. Is the content of the artwork more important than the art itself? It's a question we have asked in a video earlier this year, and many people would agree that a good artwork should be able to stand alone, and that if we need a wall text or an explanation, a theory to justify the work, that it's just an excuse for to uplift bad art. However, today I want to challenge this. Art can indeed be immediate impact, immediate effect, but art is also in many cases context. There is great power in context, and art can really play with context and do things that one cannot do through mere visual effects with direct impact. Therefore, in this video I want to critically challenge this dangerous myth that art needs to stand alone, because let's be honest, standing alone that would depend from viewer to viewer.
For some, a conceptual artwork like 1 and 3 Chairs by Joseph Kosuth can be experienced as something aesthetic. The way it is arranged, it is compositionally being put in all the right places, whereas others would think it lacks skill and aesthetic principles. Furthermore, those with an understanding of Platonian theory would see the link, of course, between the categories the artist refers to: the idea, the object, and the image. Whereas those who are not familiar with Platonian theory, well, they might wonder, what the hell is this about? So the context is not only dictated by the artwork and the artist, or when it is created. It also depends on the context that the viewer's frame of reference has to offer, which can drastically shift the ability of an artwork to stand alone or not.
Others would say a Rothko is not able to stand alone and that we need the explanation about what these large planes of color mean, even though a Rothko painting is direct impact, if nothing else. But one can actually say this also about a lot of old master paintings. If we see the still life by Bruegel, we can appreciate it because it's very nicely painted. But if you learn about the context, that all these flowers we see here that are flourishing are actually flowers that flourish in different times of the year. So it's a bouquet that could never exist, but that the artist, due to his botanical knowledge and his skill to document and depict that knowledge in a single image, makes, of course, the artwork a lot more intriguing. So why would it be a problem for contemporary art to use context or existing knowledge so that people can achieve a deeper understanding and appreciation of an artwork or of a particular topic of life? Let's discuss a first artwork. And I think this artwork, especially considering the very troubling events lately, is perhaps one of the most relevant and important contemporary artworks of our era. If we have a look at the artwork as a standalone piece and we have no information or context whatsoever, we see a video of a man with a leaking can walking through a Middle Eastern landscape. However, this isn't just any walk this person is performing. He's actually walking with this leaking can on the border between Israel and Palestine, where there has been a tremendous war going on, of course, lately. A very complex and troublesome conflict. So Francis Alys in this artwork draws that contested border between Israel and Palestine, that green line that also has a very historical problematic issue, because the green line that was drawn on the map, which was a map in scale with a green marker of 3 to 4 millimeters wide, is actually a land of almost 80 meters wide. So of whom is this land? What Francis Alys does so strongly here, it's a very poetic act by making this line tangible. And we also see not only this historically drawn line that he walks, that draws back to 1948, but we also see the lingering effects of that line today.
This poetic action, making this abstract border momentarily visible, is of course very, very poignant. The paint cuts through contested neighborhoods, military zones, refugee areas, and private gardens even, exposing actually how arbitrary the line is on paper and in lived reality, and how it was imminent to be contested and resulted in decades of conflict. The Green Line was unstable from the start. A diplomatic solution That was no solution at all, especially today in the face of relentless war images, the famine, the destruction, the hatred, and without resorting to a polarizing or decrying discourse, Alys captures the problem in this one very poetic act.
Another great example can be found in the work of Luc Tuymans. Luc Tuymans, who is arguably the most important figurative painter of his generation, in fact. And the artwork numbers, we actually see not so figurative paintings. We see these monumental paintings of numbers, isolated, on this very trembling dark background. And if the artwork needs to stand alone, some can actually be impressed by their monumentality and by the typical restlessness in the brushwork of Tuymans, and also the abundance of color in this seemingly monochromatic painting. Others will think it is not able to stand alone, that there is this elitist theory behind it, because all we see is a number on a painting, and therefore it is a bad artwork. However, the context of these paintings is that they were created in 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic was in full swing and people were dying every single day. And every morning, especially here in Belgium, on the news, the deaths were being communicated, the numbers were being shared. And what Tuymans does so ingeniously here with this series, and I think this is a very underrated series. I don't think Tuymans is an underrated painter, but this is a very underrated series, in my opinion, one of my favorites of his work. He depicts these numbers at a human scale, because behind those numbers there are actual people. And when dealing with these numbers, we can deal with those statistics in a very insensitive manner. It doesn't touch us that badly. It doesn't feel as harsh, even though the reality of the people behind those numbers is very harsh. Surviving chances are being presented in percentages. Can you imagine how the lives of people being put into percentages, how dehumanizing that is, and also how these numbers also form a certain countdown. So there is this very unsettling and threatening undercurrent in these paintings, which is very poignant. Instead of going for a very easy to consume and stand-alone approach to discuss COVID-19, for instance, nicely painted scenes of people with masks, COVID-19 masks, or people in isolation, that would be very easy to consume and therefore it could stand alone. Instead, Tuymans goes for a very refined approach that is actually a lot more powerful, and that also, I visited that show, had a much stronger impact, which is then of course is a personal thing, because that's a personal experience. But you can see how these artworks do not necessarily stand alone, but when having, for instance, with the year it was made, or the title, or the location it took place, that we can start to think, and actually quite easily for some can get to what the work is about. You might also think, well, Julien, why are you once more showcasing the art by Belgian artists? It's actually because I wrote a book in the past 18 months about Belgian contemporary art, art.be, and it actually uses the typical top list approach that I used for many of these videos here, but applied to Belgium. And this has been a project that has perhaps taken the most time of me this year. So I'm very happy that the book is out and launched before the end of the year. The book is in Dutch, so if you would like to purchase this book, I can understand why it is difficult. I will leave a link for those who are Dutch speaking, or perhaps want a very nice coffee book table. It also consists of 430 images. The publisher did a great job in terms of the graphic design. They're one of the world's best when it comes to graphic design of art books, or books as an alternate space for art. Or if you simply want to support me, then I would greatly appreciate, of course, any support. I will link to it in the description below. Art.be, definitely another milestone for me personally, and a book that I'm very, very proud of. I very much hope that you enjoyed this brief discussion with two iconic works of art of our age about the power of context in art. Feel free to watch our video on creating and explaining your art, which is actually a conversation with the artist AJ Kurion, also the founder of New Crits Next. Support us on Patreon and please consider subscribing to stay posted for more contemporary art. Bye.